Hello. Welcome to our March for Science and Youngo and EarthX TV stream of our nightly COP wrap-up discussion. I'm so glad to be here again with my favorite people, Hita and Marie Claire. Obviously for those watching, please celebrate Hita and I's new announcement. Just happened tonight. We'll keep it in the dark for now, but we'll move on to it. But for those watching, obviously today was a very important day at COP. Yesterday it was closed because it was Sunday. But Monday we are starting and going into our second week of COP. So, Hita and Marie Claire, could you give us just a little overview of what happened today at COP?
Sure. So, hi everyone. Welcome back. It's week 2, day 1 at COP26, and we have just finished a super exciting night after a long day at COP. And today was started with a plenary, which is basically a big room where all countries come together. And it started with a stock take. So, we took stock of what happened in the first week and where we are at and how to finish negotiations by week 2. So if you remember on Saturday last, we were at the COP very late, almost until 1 a.m., and we finished two of the negotiating bodies, which is the SBI, Subsidiary Body for Implementation, and the SubSTA, which is the Subsidiary Body for Scientific and Technological Advice. And both of these concluded. So we had the chairs of both of these bodies come in and debrief on what happened in the past week and how the negotiations have concluded, on what the outcome looks like. And from here, pick up and take into the other three bodies which are negotiating. So the COP is a supreme decision making body, but there is still the CMP, which is on the Kyoto Protocol, and the CMA, which is on the Paris Agreement. And the names are really, really long. You don't need to know them. So the CMP is short for Conference of Parties, for the Meeting of Parties for the Paris Agreement. And the CMA, there's the CMA, and the CMP is Conference of Parties, for the Meeting of the Parties for the Kyoto Protocol. Anyway, all you need to know, CMP is for protocol, CMA is for Paris Agreement. And so these are the two negotiating bodies that are now still having the negotiations, which are undergoing, and this will be concluded. And the final decisions for all of this will come under the COP, which is a supreme decision making body. So we had a stock taking this morning with the COP president, with the chairs of the SPs, basically technical stuff. And the outcome was observers had the chance to speak, which is the 9 UNFCCC constituencies, and there were very clear reflections on where we're at, on how progress is not really, we're not seeing it at the pace and scale we need to see. Observers are still being excluded from the process, where we only have limitations and barriers on how many people enter the room. So even though people really want this to be the most inclusive COP ever, while there are people in the area, we're still not having people within the rooms in the negotiations because of COVID barriers, because of space constraints, so on and so forth. So quite a few critical comments from the observers on how that went, on how as youth, as Youngo, we spoke about how we've had the global youth statement that we've told you about, and had 40,000 young people contribute to this global youth statement, but we're still not seeing action at the pace and scale required. So that was the morning of the day, this until the afternoon.
Amazing. So, obviously to our audience that is watching right now, please, if you just listen to what Hita said and you were so confused or you have no idea what's going on, put a comment in the chat and we will answer that later in the stream. But off of what you said, Hita, thank you for wrapping it up for us. And I'd love to know, what you said there were a lot of outcomes, and you're talking about what are the results of all of this. So what are some of the positive outcomes, and then also what are some of the negative outcomes of what you found today?
Yeah, so as mentioned, in the conclusions, we mentioned it quickly on Saturday already. For example, we made progress, so we could really conclude a lot of the items, which is good, because otherwise we will drag it on, right, as we have been doing for the last couple, basically 6 years. On the other side, we really think it's very important to not just focus on the speed and getting as many topics done as fast as possible, but really also reflect on what is needed. For example, the inclusion of young people. For example, that human rights are very essential when we do climate action. And for us, it's very heartbreaking to see that then in the name of progress, such essential things are getting cut off. And then also like lines like keep 1.5 alive are getting very blurry, right? And it's just a tagline. And we would really like to see that this is getting implemented in text. And for this, it's very essential that, for example, the reference to human rights would have been in there. But because of the parties wanted to make progress and wanted to finish, they didn't open this up again, the negotiation, and now there is no reference to human rights when it comes to empowerment, when it comes to education, to training, and so on. So this is very sad to see, but I think it's still good, and we can still push now also in the second week, and we can still make some progress. And I think it's great to see that there is also, today was the day of adaptation and loss and damage. As mentioned, every day has a specific topic, which is not per se correlated with the negotiations, but of course there is a negotiating item to it. So we can see that there is more and more also financial support committed to adaptation, not yet to loss and damage. So loss and damage is still a kind of a taboo topic, which also like Yango and other constituencies are fighting hard for it, because again that's very 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 important also to tackle when it also comes to the human rights aspect. But we can see there is already more openness to talk about certain things. On the other hand, if we see what science requires us to commit to, we are still very very far away. So there is this gap, right, between where we should be and where the action should lead to, the ambition should lead to, and where we are at. So this is something which keeps us busy for this week.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for that, Marie Claire. And heading into this week, obviously you've said some things have had to be left by the wayside, which is devastating a lot of the time to a lot of different communities and constituencies. But heading into this week, what are some things that you want all negotiations to hold close in mind? It's like you were talking about human rights a lot, but aside from human rights, and that's very broad, what specifically do you want delegations to hold very close to mind as they head into negotiations?
Yeah, I think this is a tricky question, but I think one of the biggest things is really acting on the finance commitments. There's been a lot of talk for years to have this $100 billion commitment on finance, which is supposed to be by 2020. And we're now seeing that it's not going to be. I think 2023 is probably where we're going to achieve this $100 billion finance commitment. It was supposed to be 100 billion every year starting from 2020. So we're not really seeing that happen. So one is really stepping up the finance commitment, not just speaking about more numbers, but really seeing that happen into action, seeing the money flowing in, because this money is going to go into adaptation, this money is going to go into building capacity building, is going to go into dealing with loss and damage. And this $100 billion, while it sounds a lot, is still not enough for most part of the world to be able to deal with the climate crisis, to be able to build capacity, have adaptation techniques, and have on the ground support when it comes to dealing with impacts of climate change. So this is the bare minimum that we're looking at. And we're also looking at seeing on how we really, we keep mentioning this, the Paris Agreement work program. It's basically, in simple terms, Paris Agreement, for me, if I have to explain it to someone, it's like a menu card. And the work program is like the recipe book on how you're going to make things in the menu card. So we really need this recipe book to be completed in order to implement everything that we really want to happen and we want to see. So we need to finish the negotiations by the end of this week. It's 4 more days to go. And we really need to see progress in that sense. Part of it are already over on Saturday, but the other 2 parts of it, which are very crucial, are still pending. And we really need to see progress. We need to see parties or countries coming together, making decision, and not just compromising on the name of progress.
Absolutely. And so obviously, I was at COP25 and we saw negotiations extend past the end of COP. Do you think that will happen again? If so, why? And why do you hope that maybe it won't or it will happen again?
Well, it's always very hard to predict. What we can say is that also, for example, the stock take, which we just talked about in the morning, was supposed to happen on Saturday, right? There would have been the joint, or there would have been the closing of the two negotiated items, and then we would have the stock take. But this was then transferred to Monday because there was no time. Also, normally at 12 the venue would close and the technicians would leave. Nevertheless, we run, I think, like, what was it, almost it was almost 1 o'clock when they negotiate, ma'am. So we can see that it's dragging on, right? Nevertheless, I do believe that the COP presidency and also the UNFCCC is putting all the efforts on really trying to close on Friday night. Probably normally it's closing in the evening, but then I think it will just drag on. But I don't think we're going to go 44 hours over because it's just literally draining, like physically, right? I mean, it's everyone is already tired, like as we are. It's very intense also, like after such a long time just not being with so many people. At least for me, it's quite overwhelming to see so many people constantly having this but then for the negotiators, for us it's the logistical meetings and here and there. So I do believe that they put all the efforts to really try to conclude on Friday late, but really try to have then Saturday and Sunday off. I think that the tricky part is going to be, again, like the Article 6, the carbon trading scheme. We have already heard some rumors that there is again they're trying to take off like all the language in regards to human rights, which is a big fat red line for many countries. That the carbon trading cannot have any infringe with indigenous rights, with human rights. And I think it's also really important for young people again. So we will see where we can compromise in this regard, but we can never compromise on basic human rights.
Yeah,
that's true. And I think it should be a huge red flag because we look at the SDG goals and what we all work towards in terms of our everyday work. And if none of those things, or not only if none of those things, but if not all of those things are communicated throughout whatever you're trying to accomplish, then I think a lot of young people just won't put their hand in and won't say, I agree with this, because we need every single one of those SDGs in terms for our livelihood, in terms for our communities, to not only defeat and to strive past the climate crisis, but to make it a more livable world, an equitable world for all of us. So I'm glad you're looking out for those SDGs and those deal breakers in terms of how we sign on to climate deals, especially human rights, because it's non-negotiable. So in terms of, for our audience, I'd love to hear what are some of your personal goals heading into the last week of COP?
Well, I think our personal goals for us is basically trying to ensure that young people are meaningfully engaged, that we're part of the process, our voices are heard and not just, said, okay, yes, we hear you, but then that's the end of it. Like, not just heard, but also listened to, taken into consideration. And as global focal points of the youth constituency, I think this has been our primary focus in the 2 years leading up to COP26, ensuring that, youth are a part of the process, youth are engaged meaningfully, and meaningfully really means taking the views and considerations, making a bottom-up approach where the young people can decide on how they want to engage and what they want to do. So it's a whole different process of engagement that we've been trying to work for 2 years. And I think I can safely speak for both of us when I say this is our personal goal for COP26, but from the negotiations, of course, there are a lot of different standpoints. We really want to see completion of this Paris Agreement work program. We really want to see progress and not just compromise for the sake of progress, not just leaving behind human rights, not leaving behind minorities, leaving behind communities, young people, anyone, for the sake of, progress, for the sake of completion, and for the sake of moving forward.
Yeah, and I think it's also very important to see that we have, as mentioned, the biggest ever youth delegation here at the COP, but also we have, as already mentioned, these barriers and these limitations of accessing the room. There was lack of leadership to ensure that real inclusion is met. So for us, it's really important every single day to ensure that the people who are here on the ground get the opportunity to bring their voices forward in the negotiations, are able to meet with the negotiators. Because at the end of the day, we produced a global youth statement, and all our work towards in the last 2 years to actually bring it now in, and if we cannot bring it in this last couple of days, it's not a waste effort, but it will take a long time for certain items to bring in what we want to bring in. So for us, it's very important that we can really use this last couple of days to make to engage with the negotiators and with the negotiations to bring in our points. So success would be that we can, as much as possible, bring in these points, and as many of the points are then really also included in the final decisions.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you so much for letting our audience know what's going on and what you're looking forward to. This is my last day physically being in Glasgow and near COP. So I'd like to give a little closing statement, and then I'll hand it off to the both of you to close a little bit. But to our audience out there watching, from a youth perspective, it has been incredible to see the amount of people have the same passion for something, working towards a goal together in the same place, packed into a convention center together. It's incredible. But it is disgraceful seeing that these people have had to pack into the same place for 26 years in a row with creating no achievable goal. They have not reached or worked together enough to reach what we need to in order to fight the climate crisis. And it's really tough. And we've lost Ita and Marie Claire, but for our audience, like it's tough being here because it is a hectic event that really represents not only the goals we're trying to reach, but the struggles we're facing on the road to reaching them. And a lot of those struggles are the people here, the companies here, the organizations here. So as viewers, as people that vote in elections, that watch all of these things go down, remember that your vote counts. You are sending the people to these conferences who go to these conferences. You are electing the people that hire them. So please remember that it is important not only to Hita and Marie Claire and my own experience as a cop in these delegations, but results that come out of this event. So to stay engaged, to listen to what's happening and know and be informed about what's happening, because it's important. And if no one is listening to say that's bullshit, then they need to be, because a lot of it is, and you need to hold people accountable because they work for you. So that's my take from Scotland. I'm sure I'll be hosting you all once I get back to the States. But a closing statement tonight from both you and Heats and Marie Claire would be great.
Well, for us, it's not the closing yet.
Yeah, no, it's not. You have to continue. But for tonight, at least, before you go sleep, pre-sleep statement would be great.
Yeah, I think for us, we're basically just looking to see how the next 4 days go. It's been so hectic every single day. It's really surprising to see that we're already in week 2. We're already at the end of day 1 and week 2, actually almost into day 2 now with past 1 a.m. So, I mean, tomorrow is a super exciting day because tomorrow is Science Day. And I think we'll have a lot of cool updates coming up tomorrow, especially with Science Not Silence and with Yango and March for Science working together. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow, and fingers crossed, and hopefully we make some progress. And by the end of the day, we have some cool updates to share with you.
Marie Claire, any
Well,
closing?
like the agenda for us is very similar. So we are basically doing like all day almost the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm looking very much forward to Science Day because I think science was mentioned very often. Also in the lead up to this COP, it has been a tagline, as already mentioned, with like keeping 1.5 alive. Yet we still see in the negotiations that the science is not yet reflected very well. And I really hope also with this day tomorrow, with the Science Day, that's kind of a boost, that it's taken more into consideration, but also that we have like this joint raising awareness within the negotiations themselves. That what the IPC is producing with the special report on 1.5, with the assessment report now, where the first working group was already presenting their work. But also I heard that they want to create now a new special report on tipping points. So it's a lot of excitement around this as well. But it needs to, at the end of the day, translate into the negotiations, because at the end, the best scientific reports, if it's not going to make it into the policy phase, and the policies are not reflecting on it, well, at the end we need to have the harmonization that the policies are reflecting on the science. And I really hope that tomorrow with Science Day, there can be some boost in this regards, and also for the Science Not Silence campaign, that we can really lobby for it again, and we can create some momentum around this.
Right. Thank you so much. And obviously, Hita and Marie Claire have done a better job than I have done of presenting again our signature campaign, the Science Not Silence campaign, which urges governments to accept the science of the IPCC 1.5 degree report and to adjust their climate ambitions according to the report. And that's exactly, I think you hit it right on the nose. Is that we watch these delegations and we watch the negotiations and we say, what is coming out of this? But I genuinely feel that through our work and our
I can hear you.
me? Can you hear me now?
Am yes.
I hear you again, but we couldn't
hear I'm audible.
5 seconds.
Great. And this is a goal that we can work towards without going through the negotiation process that is so bureaucratically segregated and within itself. And we can go to governments and say, do you accept the science of this report? Will you pledge to create your ambition so that they meet the requirements of this report? Because we have to listen to the science. So obviously we head into Science Day, and I'm very excited about that. I'll be on a plane the whole time, but I hope to hear about it from you and from our March for Science audience. If you want to join in the conversation tomorrow, I encourage you to, because it will be a fruitful one. But other than that, thank you, Hita and Marie Claire. It's been a pleasure being here with you at COP. But I must head back to the United States. But strap in for Science Day, and I'm very excited. Thank you all to our March for Science audience for joining, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.